Okay, excellent. Shall we get going? Welcome, everybody. Welcome to the Projectworks podcast, a conversation and community for high growth consulting firm leaders about what it takes to build an AI era consulting firm. My name is Dominique. I'm the Chief Customer Officer here at Projectworks. And welcome, as always, Mark Ortung, our CEO. Hey, Mark, how's it going?
I am good. How are you doing?
I'm really good and pretty excited about this week's episode. It's going to be a really good one. I know you and I have sort of spent some time going through the slides and talking about this a lot. It's going to be a good topic to talk about. Today's episode is all about the back office. So all of that stuff behind the scenes that is essential to ensuring your firm grows profitably, but often seen as that sort of non-billable stuff. That also has to get done to be able to serve customers, something I know that we're both pretty excited to be talking about.
Yeah, I'm also excited that it's very hands-on. We're going to actually dive in and show you some skills and some demos. So looking forward to it.
Yeah, it's great. I really believe there'll be some really cool stuff that people will be able to come away with. So anyone who's tuned in, I'm really hopeful you'll come away from the session with some stuff that you can really, operate from today. And spoiler alert about back office, but it is part of running and growing a successful consultancy firm that we believe lots of leaders underestimate, which I think, you'll see appear in an oversized general and admin expenses line on a P&L. I think you can relate to that in your days of running consultancies, Mark. Would that be right?
Oh yeah, it's on the one hand the thing that maybe adds the least value in some ways, like you think about. But in many ways, it's really critical to driving your growth, and it is an area that you can really drive your profit higher if you make your back office lean. So yeah.
Now, let's get Jacob to bring up a poll. There's a poll coming up on exactly sort of the question around G&A expenses. So what is your firm's G&A, so general and admin expenses, line look like as a percentage of your revenue? If you're here live, what do you think G&A is as a percentage of your revenue at the moment? And I know we're going to go through that in more detail coming up on some slides, but is that a pretty normal way to think about it, Mark? Would you say as a percentage of your overall revenue opposed to sort of standalone costs?
Yeah, that was sort of the guideline I always had was to think about it as a percentage of revenue. And and as you scale, we'll get into this in a minute. As you scale, it becomes easier to make this number smaller. So it's a bit of we'll show you kind of small, medium, large companies. It's all over the place a bit. But as you
Yeah.
get bigger, you can sort of spread some fixed costs over more revenue, and it gets easier to get to a lower and lower percentage.
Because all you have to do is get big enough, have enough business
Yeah.
coming in to make that lower. That's always the dream, isn't it? Building consultancy, get to the size where stuff becomes easier.
Yes.
And that is our intention today. We're going to go through some slides. We're going to talk about G&A expenses, what we mean by that, how that shapes up. Mark's going to really do some great explaining and give some real life examples of what he did in his firm to try and bring that across. And then we're going to really get into some hands-on pieces and some AI sort of skills and ways that can support that. Thank you for those people who jumped on the poll here. What was your firm's G&A as percentage of revenue? We have a bunch of people that think less than 10%, which is pretty awesome. 10 to 20, but a chunk in there also that are 21 to 30% of their revenue, which is not a small number, when you're trying to manage costs and really drive from revenue, and also a big chunk that are unsure, which is also totally valid as you're growing and scaling. I imagine, Mark, you've been in that position before where you're just running forward and focused at potentially like closing as many deals as possible, build it and they will come.
Yep.
Okay, should we get into the slides? Do we do that? Ask
Yeah.
Jacob to share those. As always, if you had any questions or comments, please drop them in a chat and we will do our very best to give it to as many as we can. Here it is on the screen. AI for the back office, how to cut admin costs with AI. The first slide here is our maturity model, which we've spoken to in previous podcasts. If you haven't seen this before, the idea is that when you're working really hard to grow a scaling, profitable consultancy firm, there's sort of two areas that you're always, pulling back and forth on. One is growth, so repeatable growth, winning more work, getting your team selling, and the other one is operating that work as profitably as possible. So lean admin, visibility, delivery margins, all of that good stuff. And I think today, really the area that this falls in most is this first one here on this lean admin marker. Again, I know this, it's the first one here, level one on the operations track. Lean admin's pretty important, right? One might say the foundation for the rest of that stuff.
It is crucial. I would also say it's one of the ones I think a lot of consultants spend all their time with clients, as they should. They sort of work on client work and billable work, and they spend very little time on this piece at all, right? So, especially as you're growing a firm, you've got a young firm and it's growing, you want to spend your time with clients, with prospective clients, with your team. And what often gets put to the bottom of the priority list is getting your admin and your processes, your people, your tech right. So it's on the one hand, one of the easiest places to increase your bottom line. It's also one of the least paid attention to, I think. So hopefully we can show how to do this without as much effort and make it possible to do and really get you focused on client work, billable work, growing the firm, while at the same time getting your admin to be much leaner.
Excellent. So, what is typically in a consulting firm's G&A line? So, just to get really clear on what we're talking about today, there's sort of a couple of different areas. In a G&A line, some of those are fixed. So, salaries, rent, software, your admin or your head count across there. Those are things that are harder to move. But there are some things that are easier to move, that are more repetitive, and that's sort of your back office work. So some of the things we're calling out here is your invoicing and billing, your processes around that, your month-end close, expenses, resourcing admin, staff and recruitment admin. Some of the really easy things to call out that people might think there is like, are we going to pay recruiter overheads, or are we going to cut travel for a period of time to reduce expenses? Those are those kind of tactical things that people might do to reduce those. And it often sort of ebbs and flows. Are there any other things you want to call out there, Mark, that you've seen people take action on and sort of, that works for a period of time, but isn't maybe like a long-term repeatable action to reduce that?
I think you called out the first one that I always see is like, let's stop doing discretionary travel. Like you can travel to see a client, but um, yeah, I think this is a great list. And I think this list is what AI is really good at. So,
Yeah.
this is like a perfect target to start applying some of these tools and new technologies to just really helping you get there. Um, I think I don't know if we've got it in here. One other one I would put is contract administration, and we'll get into that as one of the examples. Um, you got to get, non-disclosures typically, and then a new master services agreement with each new client. And especially if you're working with large clients, they can be crazy. We had one that was like 100 pages, and every time we had a meeting to negotiate with them, it was like 3 hours just because there were so many sections. So it can be quite painful to do those master service agreements. So I'd add that to the list as well. This one is just using my firm Nexient as an example. How we thought about our high-level profit and loss statement was our gross margin or gross profit was basically our target was to run 30%. How we got to that was we would try to run our account margins, so just the direct costs on accounts only, somewhere between 35 and 40%. And then we would the between that and this gross margin or gross profit, we would add in bench costs, we would add in practice leadership and other delivery type people that were not billable. So for whatever reason, if they were working on sales, if they were working on practice enablement, whatever it might be. And so the net would be about 30% gross profit at the company level. And then the way we looked at it was try to spend 10% on G&A. This was when I first joined the firm. Try to spend 10% on marketing, and I would include in marketing sales and commissions. So it's really your whole sort of go-to-market function is in that 10%. And if you hit all of these goals, then you make a 10% operating profit, which then just goes onto the balance sheet. And we've labeled that fun money. It's just the money that you can put on your balance sheet makes your company stronger. Could be a draw if you're doing a distribution of profit. But at any rate, that 10% bottom line is really what you're trying to optimize. So if you can lower this G&A from 10 to 9 or 10 to 8, that goes directly into making your profit bigger by that same amount. So as we scaled, we went from when I joined, we were about 10% G&A. As we scaled, we got it down to about 7%. So it just gave us 3% additional into the profit box, or that we could make up for. So if our gross profit ran to 29 or 28, it would still let us be at that 10, 11, 12% net profit at the end of the day. So sometimes it made our profits bigger, sometimes it made up for mistakes or sins on higher up in the profit and loss statement.
And with here, this is sort of like laying this out in this way. Kind of resonates when you think back to what we were talking about in those earlier areas. If you've got fixed costs for running your business, that's essentially it. And some of them are much harder to move, like rent, salaries, embedded software into your company, those sorts of things. But there are some things that you could move. So if you're looking at this and you're thinking, well, how do I reduce that part, that G&A part, then there are some areas, and it's normally like processes. So again, we talked about the travel, but it's like how are your processes, how are you reporting or month end close? Can you tighten up some of those processes to reduce point by point, to make a change from 10% to 7%, which just essentially means you have more take home profit. And that's often what many founders and or CEs are being held to grow that number. And this is an interesting one, because really it's like you were just saying, it's as you get bigger, it can be easier to reduce that. What we've got here is a view of G&A as a percentage of revenue across whether you're potentially a small, medium or large firm in your stage of growth. And what does good look like? So do you want to talk to this a little bit, Mark, just leading on from what you were talking about from a Nexiant view?
Yeah, I think consultants often answer questions with, well, it depends. So when if you ask me like, what should your G&A be? I was trying not to say it depends. I was trying to be very crisp and say, first off, how big is your firm? And second off, where are you trying to be? Are you trying to be at average? Are you trying to be at great? Are you trying to be at best in class? So hopefully here you can sort of find your firm size and see the range that other firms are operating at. And so if you're a $5 million firm and you're at 10% or just below 10%, that's fantastic. You're, leading best in class. More likely you're at 20 or 25% at that level, just because the revenue may not be big enough to absorb some of those kind of fixed costs that you have to have. And so as you get bigger, it just gets easier and easier to make it small. I do think there's some opportunities that we're not going to get into here, but to potentially do some outsourcing on that small side, where you're probably hiring. We know the 15 to 40% range is probably because you're hiring one or two people to do some of these tasks, and you really only need the equivalent of half of their time or something like that. And so maybe there's room to get an even lower number on that small side as well. That's something we can chat about offline. If people want to pursue that, I'd be happy to chat about that.
I do think it's interesting around that sliding scale. How do you bring that further down? And I think, now we're talking a little bit about where this hides. We kind of obviously made a couple of references there as in how long it takes to do contracts, or, there's one that's been common in businesses where it's like no more travel unless it's signed off from the founder or the CEO, kind of reduces that significantly. But there is, from all the way from your bidding from work all the way through to your invoicing it, there is every stage of that engagement carries non-billable tasks. And it was interesting when you were laying that out on the slide, Mark, of like the admin tasks or G&A, also that, your go-to-market and your profit. I think go-to-market can often get quite a bit of scrutiny, and in the best way, is and you're normally quite clear on like, are you hiring a new salesperson? How much did it cost to bid for that work? I mean, not exact, but you're always sort of trying to rein that in a little bit so that you have a lower cost of acquisition. But the admin is also something that can really creep up. All the way across, the first one here is when you're bidding for work, drafting proposals, reviewing contracts. And then once you're in it, once you're really in that work, that like weekly resourcing, unexpected team changes, timesheets, just actually getting information across the business. When you're going from being 15 people to 40 people, suddenly that expands and that takes double the amount of time because you can't just kind of lean over the desk and give a description. So that stuff can kind of, I can really resonate with what you're saying, Mark, that, when you're small, almost at that scaling, like all businesses, right? That scaling stage, these costs could potentially blow out.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, so much room here to apply some of the new tools and make this stuff so much easier.
Now, what we would love to see is in the chat. If anyone wants to, now we've been talking about this, it would be really great to hear. I guess what are the tasks that you are finding hardest in your business? So, what are your most frustrating admin tasks? If anyone's keen to do that, to drop in what you think there is. Like, what parts of your business are you? Is it that? Is it resourcing your team? Is it your month end process? Is it any of the things that we've suggested? Because what we are really within this podcast and with this piece is thinking, how do we support consultants and people to really reduce that spend. And at Projectworks, we have just to really call it out, how are we doing this? As the title of this podcast would suggest, we believe that AI is really, really good at some of this stuff. There is huge opportunity to bring in. I think there's a lot of chat about AI, how to approach that, what do the humans do, what do the machines do, and lots of the stuff is just so ripe for machines to get up. Thank you, everybody. There's some good drops in the chat. Pestering staff to submit timesheets. Yes, nudging on timesheets, I think, is a universal pain point. I think everyone's sort of laughing on watching this. Resourcing, shout out to VJ, that's very cool. We'll pass that on. He is awesome. Tendering proposals and scheduling, absolutely. From running sales teams and having to answer to my delivery team of how much time I'd used in previous roles in Lifeform, that's definitely one. So some great ones here. At Projectworks, our view of AI is we've got a few things going on. Some of you might have already heard going on that we are putting together a proposal and consulting CRM, which is currently in private beta, which is sort of AI drafted client proposals, which we believe would really support that piece of drafting proposals from using content library, reusing content, and being able to, I guess, identify what won you the last deal. Where is the magic there that is a repeatable action? We also have a piece in Kia, which is our AI agent, which is in development around chat-based helping with resourcing and timesheets. So that you will be able to go into the system and say, hey, what's happening on resourcing here, or move people around, reading your data, drafting a plan. It's some pretty exciting stuff when I've seen that come to fruition. And the other is an MCP. So MCP is all around letting Claude or ChatGPT query your data. Can be used on projects. For those of you who are listening, I'm sure many of you do, but for anyone who's like, what is an MCP? Essentially, it's a standard way for AI tools to connect to other systems. So kind of think about it like a universal plug that lets AI access all of your stuff and connect it through. Mark, do you want to talk to any of these a little bit? I know that obviously you're very much across all of these and how they'll be integrated into our system.
Yeah, I think maybe I'll take it up one level to kind of use these as examples to the three different ways we're going to bring AI across Projectworks over time. So proposals is a great example of where effectively AI is just embedded in the task itself, and it's just a part of building a proposal. And if we do our job really well, it's somewhat invisible. It's not, the main point. It's just we make it easier and faster to build a proposal by using AI. Kia is a great example of what we call a system of action. So we are historically a system of record. We have your timesheets, your expenses, your invoices, your resource assignments. Now adding a system of action, we want to help you do the work. So in addition to being the place where you're keeping all your data, we actually want to take tasks off of your plate for you, and that's Kia. And then MCP will give you some examples. So we're going to focus in on MCP examples today. and we'll show you how you can take what's going on in Projectworks and integrate it with other tools that are in your ecosystem. Pretty cool stuff, to be honest. And we're hoping that the examples we give kind of spark your imagination. These are just some ideas we had, but it's pretty endless what you can do with the MCP and with Claude or with Gemini or with ChatGPT. So we'll give a couple examples of those, and actually great segue here. The first one is just a skill we're going to share, which is how to use AI to review your contracts. And this is what we'll get into this in a little bit more detail in a minute. Second one is how to connect a task management app uh, and in AI in order to just draft your timesheets. And I saw timesheets go by as one of the most frustrating, painful things. And whenever I talk to anyone in a services firm, they hate doing timesheets. So to the extent you can go into a task management app and pull the data and create a draft timesheet, it's pretty awesome. And then also we'll show you how to use AI to take your meeting notes. I saw a lot of, I think Fireflies was the meeting note taker on this call that was the most prevalent, but there's, lots of them out there. Take those notes, put them into your AI, and maybe they're the notes from your status meeting from your team, and then you can use that to update your resources. So let's get into it. We got some actual, we'll show you on each of these.
And you're right, Mark. I feel like thank you everybody for has added in some points here. I also really look forward to going through and looking at these afterwards. But there is lots that resonates. There was a lot around scheduling and resourcing and a lot around timesheets. So those are really good points for us to get into. But the first is the contract review skill, one that is close to your heart, Mark, being the
Yeah,
contracts.
yeah, this is not something that's inside of Projectworks. It's just something that I think everybody should be doing. So at Nexian, I had the benefit of a CFO who was also good at reading contracts as what I would call a contract administrator. So he was not an attorney. He was not giving me legal advice, and this is also not an attorney, and it's not giving you legal advice. But what he would be able to do is read these crazy long contracts we'd get from large companies and say, these are the 5 things you should be looking at. This is where you should focus your attention. And so we actually have a skill inside of Projectworks in Claude is the platform we use. And I use it whenever we look at a new potential partner contract. It just helps me. So what we've done here is we've taken our skill and we've kind of genericized it. I just called it consulting firm, kind of jammed together. So you see this cloud skill. I put your firm there. When you see in the demo, it'll be consulting firm jammed together is the skill we're going to invoke. And basically, you can just have it take a first pass at a contract for you. So what you need is, in this case, it's Claude, but we could probably translate this to the equivalent for ChatGPT or Gemini or other platforms. But we use Claude, so that was the easiest one for us to do. So what you'll see is we're going to drop a contract into Claude. We're going to invoke this skill, and you'll see a long bit of text. We have a lot of skills set up, and many of them contradict this skill. So we actually say, ignore all of those and just use this one we're sharing today. And then, yeah, you'll see what it does to summarize. So Jacob was good enough to record this as a demo for us, so you can see he's putting in a contract here, asking Claude to review it, and then this big chunk of text here is basically he has some other skills that say like, hey, I don't want you to be verbose. I don't want you to use emojis. I don't want all these other things, which we have in this skill. We kind of like some of the red, yellow, green. So you can see it's read this MSA. It gives you a quick executive summary, and then it begins to flag clauses for you. So the skill that we've created says, these are the areas we care about the most, and it's quite often going to be intellectual property, confidentiality, payment terms, usually warranty, indemnity comes up a lot. Limitation of liability was one that I was always arguing with people about, trying to get, a lower limitation of liability. And so this skill very quickly can take, an 80, 100-page contract and give you this level of clarity. It's got the little disclaimer at the bottom that says, "Hey, I'm not a lawyer." Some of these you probably want to run by your lawyer. And so I think a lot of you are, um, you're having to get this wall of text. I actually have a friend who is an attorney, and I personally find it really boring to read contracts. And so I asked him, like, how do you do this all day? Like, I would really go crazy if I had to. And he said, I stand up and walk around while I read these things because otherwise I would fall asleep. So this skill can avoid you having that kind of work in your job where you have to like literally stand up to stay awake to get through 80 pages. And hopefully this gets you effectively an agentic contract admin. And it may highlight a couple things that you want to run by your attorney, and it will help you frame how you want to negotiate and what are the most important pieces for you. So for me, it's just a really valuable, helpful skill.
Yeah, it's a great one. And I think for contracts, when I've had to read them before, the truth is once you're in your role, you really do know the pieces you care about the most, in your organization. And that's normally what you're doing. You're reading the whole thing to try and identify 4 or 5 things off the bat, is someone going to push back at this clause or this clause, because you already know what you're sort of happy to lean on a little bit and what you need to go to the lawyer. So what a time saver. So yeah, Jacob said anyone who's keen for that, just drop a skill in the chat and he'll make sure that gets forwarded through to you. But yeah, great time saver to share there, Mark. Next one should be a great one that resonates because I saw this came up a lot in the tell us about your most frustrating admin task. And this is timesheets drafted from your task management app. So the idea is that your team have, it's a much quicker, easier way of making sure that their timesheets are collated there. And this is around using the Projectworks MCP. So we have here that, what you'd need is access to the Projectworks MCP, a connected task app. So I believe the one that we've got a bit of a demo one is Asana, but something like Asana or Jira. And you'd need an AI assistant of some kind on a paid plan. I think we're going to have a bit of a demo here, but before we do that, Mark, do you want to talk to this or you can talk to it while it's
I'll
through?
talk about Spank. So this
Yep.
is, for those of you familiar with Asana, this is, looking at a project in Asana and the various tasks. And then, so Grady, who set up this demo for us, asks it to go in, look at the tasks that he's worked on and to use our MCP and push them into a draft version of his timesheet. So, this is, again, one of those tasks that everybody hates, is keeping up to date on their timesheet. And at the same time, when I was running Nexient, I really wanted everybody to do their timesheet every day. So here, what you'll see is it's gone through and it's added those 3 tasks that were in Asana. It's gone in and put them on his timesheet. So it's able to match based on so you probably want to help it a little bit, but like there are task names in Asana and it's used its kind of AI to match it to the appropriate budget lines in Projectworks that he's got on his time card. So again, this is meant to be a quick, simple example, but you can do a lot of things with this. For those of you that have played a lot with Claude or ChatGPT, it's pretty unlimited what you can do. And so we're exposing both read and write into timesheets and resources through our MCP. Both of those are available today in a beta. This is, I think a lot of consultants' dream is that Claude or ChatGPT does my timesheet for me. And maybe I go in and say, oh, I'm going to make 2 adjustments, then I'm going to hit submit. And I don't have to try to remember what I did. I don't have to like go through and fill the whole thing out. Yeah.
I think what's very cool with this as well, with the MCP, is it does, of course you can set these sorts of things up for your team to say, hey, we've got this, way of doing things now, and we want to encourage you to do this, but it also puts the power in your people's hands a bit because they can have access to building these sorts of things themselves. That if you have someone who is really tech savvy, and as we always know, things that people build themselves or do, they're much more likely to be interested in using, opposed to sort of like mandates from above. So it is a really nice way of saying, hey, this is how you use, this is the Claude or the ChatGPT or whatever your team are using in their day-to-day, and then they can sort of get that through and make sure that they're using it themselves. I think you have much higher uptake. I can see a couple of people are interested, and thank you, Jacob. You've popped that for MCP beta. That's great.
Yeah, and we have just a quick question there I'll answer. Can the MCP connect to an expense management system, in this case, Wheel, to import customer disbursements to project expenses? The short answer is long run, yes. Today, not yet. Because what we are doing is we're prioritizing which parts of Projectworks we're making available um, through the MCP, and that our first two are the resourcing piece and the timesheet piece. So we will, one of the things we love everybody's input on is when we've got resources and timesheets done, what's the next area of Projectworks you'd like us to add to the MCP? That's sort of a roadmap decision we have yet to make. And so in this case, we would need to add expenses as a area to the MCP to make that example work. So I see at least two votes for it going by. So thank you. Great input. Um, and yeah, so we will share that with our product team. Uh, let's move to the next example because this one's a fun one as well. So we've got this idea is that at least in my life, I'm followed around by AI note takers everywhere I go, sometimes two or three, it feels like. And so most things are recorded if you're doing an internal status meeting for your client project, or maybe even a status meeting with the client, you're very likely recording it somehow. And so there's going to be a transcript from that meeting that you could plug into your AI platform. So, for example, have your status meeting with the client, take all of the notes, put it into Claude or ChatGPT, and then ask it to take the resourcing issues that came up and make changes in Projectworks through our MCP for resources. So again, we've got a demo showing you that. So this is just looking at this Mission to Mars project. It's one of our favorite demo ones, and you can see George Clooney and Matt Damon have a bunch of work starting on the 17th of August and going onward from there. And so what we'll do next is we'll go in and um, yeah, you can kind of see we're highlighting it with the mouse there, the piece that we're going to have come up. So we've basically just taken the transcript from our meeting and dumped it into Claude and said, can you make changes to the project resourcing based on the transcript? So what happened in the meeting is, and it'll show in a second, the call was that Tom Hanks said, hey, this mission to Mars has to wait 4 weeks before it can start. Same hours, 4 weeks later, start date for these two resources. So those two resources you saw basically in the status meeting were blocked by something and have to wait 4 weeks to start. So then Claude, in this case, went onto the environment and moved those two people's work out 4 weeks. So we'll see that updated here in just a second. So now you can see those first 4 weeks, they have 0 hours, and then their work begins the week of the fifth week in there. So again, we're all doing this note taker thing. Why not try to put it to work? Is the idea. And so the resourcing piece in our MCP is both read and write. So you can ask it questions about, is anyone booked over the Christmas holiday, or is anyone overbooked? You can get a lot of data like that, but you can also ask it to make changes like this, like, hey, take this project for these two people, start it 4 weeks later, and then you can see it actually makes the update.
So cool. I think that's going to be a really great one because there was a lot of feedback on the just on the comments here about the time that takes to readjust resourcing. And I wanted to call out, we had a comment by someone in here saying, scroll up, what if you're only using Projectworks? Will Projectworks space still be developed and prioritised, or the MCP pieces be prioritised? They would prefer to only have one system. And I would call it straight away that Projectworks is definitely still being worked on, and that there is definitely a prioritisation of that. I think earlier we spoke about the different approaches to AI within our system and how we're doing that. And there is definitely a mix of creating products like our proposal developer that are using AI to be able to do things faster and more efficiently and just better within a system. There is also us developing our own agents within Projectworks to help do this, and also an MCP to allow the team or our customers to work how they want to work. And an example of that for resourcing will be, you might want to upload a transcript and put it into and connect it with MCP and do that. Or in addition, we're developing Kia, so you will be able to do that straight in the system. So you'll be able to write, just chatted to Mark and we want to move out 2 people 2 weeks, and then that will move along there. So I don't know if you have anything to add on that, Mark, as well.
Yeah, just to highlight what you said, we are absolutely investing in Projectworks itself, in Kia, which is our agent, which is inside of Projectworks, and then also the MCP. We're trying to let you choose how you want to best interact. But so in the case of resourcing, just to give an example, we've just invested a lot of work and we're in beta now with a new user experience that allows you to do things like bulk shift a project to the right. You can do that by just grabbing the project. There's like 3 dots. You grab the drop down and you can move the project entirely through the user experience, kind of like you would have done previously, except this feature didn't exist. So it's a new feature in the user experience. We also invested to make the user experience look a little bit better. There's a number of enhancements that are coming together there. So that's like a great example of core product investment that's happening. We're doing a lot of it. Second thing is, as Dom mentioned, there's Kia. So Kia will be a prompting interface on top of that new interface for resourcing. So you could go to Kia inside the product and say, please move this project in its entirety out 4 weeks. Kia would then confirm, I'm going to make these 12 changes. You would say yes, and it would move it over for you. So it gives you you can either use the graphical interface or the prompting interface. And then also we're exposing it through the MCP. So we think different people are going to have different ways of working, and we want to make it possible for you to do the one that best fits your workflow. So if that's using our graphical interface, awesome. We're going to keep investing there and actually keep enhancing it quite a bit. If you want a prompting interface inside of Projectworks, that will be there through Kia. And I think in either 2 or 4 weeks, we are doing one of these with a bunch of examples of Kia, which is the agent inside of Projectworks. So today we happen to pick the MCP. Next step, I think we'll be doing Kia examples. And then that actually, I think, answers another question about a Copilot agent to interface to PW. I think that means what we're doing with Kia. So like our own Copilot is what we're calling Kia. It's in beta and also working against resources and timesheets, I believe, at this point. And we can, so effectively that is like a Copilot. Kia, KEA, by the way, is a Alpine parrot here in New Zealand. And so they're kind of a fun bird, a smart bird, and that's just what we've chosen to name our agent after.
We've got a couple of other questions in the chat that might be good to answer. I just want to also let you know, I know we've got 5 minutes left on the clock. I just wanted to let everyone know that our intent is that we'll respond to all questions if we don't get to them on the call. We can see your names, we'll come back. And I think Jacob's already put it in the chat, but we do have a couple of our product team who are on there seeing all of these. So now's your time to drop some questions or requests in the chat, loving that. And they're looking through all of our, anyone who's submitted on the forms to get back to those. We had a questions around saying, can you ask AI to tell you to review your resourcing plan and then tell you when you can deliver a project, say like 200 hours and 200 hours there? Yes, some of the demos I have seen for Kia so far on resourcing have been, Smart Parrot giving some very smart answers. sort of, can you move these people out? What else should I be doing? Who else should I put on a project? It's pretty cool, huh, Mark? Like it's a very cool system to be able to, as we're starting to get used to with AI around there, to really give feedback. And we think that's an important thing around our AI within our product, is that it should really be able to advise our customers, not just sort of take orders.
Yeah, exactly. It's pretty incredible. It's really up to how you prompt it. So you can ask it for, hey, tell me if people are overbooked, or you can say, find the people that are overbooked and suggest what you want to, what would be the best plan to resolve it. So maybe you'd say this person has 80 hours, this person has none, they seem to have the same skills. Do you want me to shift half the work over to this other person? And you just say yes. So yeah, it's pretty amazing. And I think it will just get better and better over time. I think that's the other thing, is we are trying to move very quickly to get this all up and running, get it in front of customers, and we're going to keep investing more and more in it. And I think it'll just get better and better over time. So I saw Stu is in the comments. He is going to be a very popular guy. He's our product manager who owns both the MCP and Kia. And yeah, I know he loves talking with customers and prospective customers and just really understanding your workflows, your use cases, where the pain points are, and how we can keep making these tools better.
There's been a few questions of like, is this going to be available on all plans? So regardless of what plan you're on. And the honest answer is, when we're going through beta, that's something that we're experimenting with. Our intention at the moment is that MCP would be available on all plans. But as we go through beta and experiment things around there, same with Kia, we're just going to keep developing those. So anyone who is a customer who would like to get onto that beta, we'd love to hear from you, because your feedback across that on exactly how you'll use it, as well as how we're able to build that in the background, will be really important. Cool. Awesome.
Yeah, fun stuff. It's just amazing how fast this stuff moves. And so we've been pushing, ourselves to move as fast, and it's been a great ride so far.
Yeah, it is. And big thank you for any customers who are on the call already listening, who have already been a big part of working with our product team to develop that. Of course, it goes without saying, it's really important for us to hear what's going to work and not work, so that we can get the best things and the right things out to market as soon as possible. I think we're rounding out our time, everybody. This has been a great one. Thank you so much for all the engagement on the chat. It's always much more fun for Mark and I when we have a lot of people asking questions and doing comments. So it's been really good. And I thank you to the Projectworks team who were able to put together some of these demos. As Mark has already alluded to, we're going to be back in 2 weeks with an episode focused on agentic AI for project and delivery leaders. So if you liked this one, I think you're really going to like the next one. I know that there's always comms going on about that, and you can find us on our website, but I'm sure there will be a link possibly appearing in the chat to save your seat for that one. You can find us all on LinkedIn, as always, and you make sure to subscribe to the Projectworks podcast on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or YouTube. Any final words for the audience listening, Mark, before we sign off?
No, I'd agree with you. The one in 2 weeks is going to be a lot of fun too. This stuff is just fun to work with.
Yeah, it's very cool. Thank you, everybody, for joining. Have a great rest of your day, and we'll see you in 2 weeks.